Again, Jason has said it. I'll just reiterate. Myself, Rahul Bhardwaj. I am Vice President Global Privacy and Data Security at Duff and Phelps. Uh, uh, in next half an hour or so, I will be sharing with you what worked for us in meeting global challenge of privacy and security, uh, the best practices which we went implemented, executed to meet this mammoth challenge. Feel free to ask me any questions. We all are here to learn from each other, and that's what I intend to do. So, getting ahead with our session today, I think these are some of the stats which I believe most of you must have read about them, thought about them, and many of you have been asked questions about these in terms of where we are when bad news hits the press. Throughout 2020, and I think I will say as early as 2018, we started seeing a trend in these kind of news that the cyber attacks are increasing while the whole security and IT world is talking about automation. So are the hackers. I think report from University of Maryland just evidence of that most of the attacks are automated with 39 seconds on an average. Every attack is taking place. So the pattern we have seen is that attacks are increasing, breaches are increasing, and so are the fines, the regulatory obligations which are coming with each of this hack and incident. And when regulators start seeing a trend, it results in increased regulatory oversight, new regulations, new law, and a majority of budget over a period of last couple of years have been purely kept aside to meet these regulatory obligations. We don't see that trend going down anytime soon. I think this explosion of privacy regulation over last couple of years since GDPR came into just skyrocketed the compliance budgets and the amount of money has been spent to just get ready to meet or comply to these regulations. We within security world, because I also wear a hat of CISO for APAC region of Duff and Phelps, cannot live in our own isolated world of security. I think the next slide will, even though it's a year old, you will see that every region globally started coming up with new regulations, whether it's pertaining to privacy or security. And that's the reality of the world or modern era where we live in. The new legislative map or regulatory map looks a lot different. There is a lot more region which now has a definitive cybersecurity or privacy regulation which you need to comply with. I think one good thing about this is that it has forced organization to really start having a structured approach, especially if you are a global company which has to meet. So it is no more, I'm only need to worry about, let's say, a small pocket or a small segment of my business working in a particular region. It's now a global phenomenon. You have to be good all the time, irrespective of which geography you are working. Yes, another challenge to having these different obligations is that you can't have one baseline which will cover all of them. We need to be agile in both security and privacy. And if these two groups are not working together hand in hand, we will have a challenge in our hand. I think More often, I'm pretty sure you also must have heard a query coming in, hey, our client has asked us, do we have this control? And then you wonder where the hell this control came from, because this requirement was not part of our baseline framework. Well, most probably the client is, you are working in a regulated service, and the regulator have mandated being within security or technology work, you are made aware of that kind of specific nuances coming out of these regulations. We all are facing an uphill battle against the compliance to these new privacy and security regulation. And the other challenge, I believe, is the shared terminology which are being used by these different regulations and laws. I think since GDPR has come up, the last time we did check there, what we call them as a GDPR-alike regulations. We counted about 36 of them in different parts of the globe. And whether we like it or not, there is a good competitive edge going around within regulators. Like, we will like to do things slightly different from what others have done, and that create requirements which are slightly different from what you have dealt in past. I think a prime example will be, we all around the globe can't even agree on one standard definition of what information security or what data privacy means. It's different for different regulators. The components are different. I often tend to go back to the basic definition coming out of Google. If you just key in define information security within Google, it says the state of being protected against the unauthorized use of information, especially within electronic information, or the measure we take to. I think that's a fundamental definition I tend to go to. And similarly for privacy, where if you key in data privacy definition, it simply says the state or a condition of being free from observed or disturbed by other people. I often have this running line is that we tend to secure the data, and privacy is all about getting rid of data, because without the data, you can't be observed or disturbed. So these two are necessary evil to operate in modern era. So that brings us to the poll question. Jason, if you can help us out with the question so that we can see where the audience are.
So guys, if you can't see the poll, the question is, how many privacy and security regulations does your organization need to support? How many privacy and security regulations does your organization need to support? The options are 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 6, or 7+. Again, how many privacy and security regulations does your organization need to support? 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 6, or 7+. If you're unable to see the poll, please feel free to use the chat feature to submit your responses. I'll just leave that up for another few seconds. Okay, some good responses there. Okay, cool. I'll share the results here. There you go, Rahul. Should be able to see that. 7+. 68% of the audience saying 7+. 26% 3 to 4.
And that's the reality we all live in today. I think the map on the screen just shows you. And I think this was a genuine problem we all within the technology and security and privacy world came together and started thinking about seriously, is that the siloed approach or the traditional approach in which we were trying to address this problem was no more working. The Phelps Technology Council came together and started thinking about how we can integrate the world of privacy and data security. And these were the key consideration or difference which must be considered if you are looking to take that integrated approach. Obviously, there are unique requirements and objective of each of these two programs. So one, if you have one, definitely does not mean that you are compliant to the other. Security does not equate to privacy and vice versa. If you have everything from related to a privacy framework, you really can't intend to say that you have implemented security. One is definitely addressing the regulation. And I believe security provides the foundation to implement and execute these regulatory requirements. The other important aspect out here is that when you tend to sit and design which of these two frameworks should be addressed first, I think the council member did agree that privacy questions should always be addressed first, because that will give you the underlying requirements which your security program must address. And how you go about addressing those challenges, those nuances, those requirements may differ from the region, the domain you are working in, the specific geographies you are trying to address, and most importantly, the culture within that organization. The underlying reason why we all came together and Forbes Technology Council member need to address this was the pitfalls in traditional approach. We all have heard about any framework require people, technology, processes. That traditional siloed approach of privacy in one house and security in other, and in some cases technology sitting in totally different bucket, was not working at all. It was costing the firms a lot more money. In spite of having multiple solutions being procured by each function separately, there was an overlap and exhaustion. The resource requirement just skyrocketed. And I have just expanded technology. You all can go ahead and see similar example. I have put the source from where I picked this up. We have similar examples coming out. What were the challenges in processes and from people perspective? And when we all ponder upon that traditional approaches and solutions are not working, the different councils, the different thought leaders came together and started putting the factors which must be considered. And I think majority of us agreed that we do need an integrated approach, and that was also reflected in various frameworks which are out there. NIST came up with cybersecurity framework, which we all know, and then followed it up in 2019 with their privacy framework. And if you end up reading them, referring them, they are complementary to each other. Similarly, some of the other framework like FIPPS, the Fair Information Practices Principle from Homeland Security, also refer back to a lot of security parameter. Lot of security and privacy leader I work with within my peer group just took GDPR and CCPA regulation as a basic framework to follow. And when you go through those regulations, they do tend to provide a lot of overlap between these two groups. For us, being a global company, having a huge presence in Europe and Asia, we found ISO 27001 series or framework to be more adopt. We were already certified on ISO 27001, which is a de facto information security standard. And when ISO last year came up with their own privacy management standard, we believe that gave us a good structure to set our privacy framework in accordance to the ISO series. So what I wanted to share with the group is that there are many ways to skin this cat. You can pick your own framework depending upon the geography, depending upon what is already working for the firm, what the culture is, what the management buy-in is. We took the ISO route. It worked pretty well. The diagram on the screen just shows a very high-level approach ISO prescribed, and it really worked for us. In the subsequent slide, I will be sharing the 7 key steps we took. We are very confident that after adopting these, we are working a lot more cohesively with our privacy and compliance group. We have gone ahead and make some structural changes within the firm where these two groups are sharing a lot more details in terms of designing the product and services, which has brought in a lot of cost saving in terms of doing patchwork, has increased our time to delivery and made our services a lot more competitive in terms of just meeting or exceeding these regulatory requirements in different geographies. Mind you, Duff provides services to 32 different countries in different geographies. So we are also subjected to multiple regulations. So moving along, in the subsequent slide, you will be seeing the 7 major key milestone steps which we undertook to integrate our framework. The first step was working with our legal counsel, privacy, and our compliance office to identify all the regulations which are applicable to us from different geographies. We took some external help to do the data mapping, and I think we had a good discipline around how we manage our data. So it was easy for us to map the volume and the data in journal, which will be subjected to these different regulations. In some cases, we had to do some additional work, but that whole phase of looking inwards, what we are subjected to, helped us to lay the scope of this project, helped us to put the budgetary request out there. Once we knew what we need to comply with, we basically took our existing security and operational practices and just conducted a high-level gap or risk assessment, whichever term you want to give. This was basically to see where we stand as is against these regulatory requirements. In some cases, we were doing pretty well. In others, we required to tweak our control or processes to meet certain requirements. And definitely, there were areas where we had to really re-engineer our whole program because maybe it was based on assumptions which no longer holds true in the new regulatory environment. And once we knew what those risks were, what needed to be done, all the stakeholders came together. We developed the roadmap. We prioritized them. I believe our legal counsel played a great role in terms of prioritizing, looking at the exposure, which as an organization we had, the resources we had on our hand, and what must be achieved. That helped us to prioritize, define a roadmap, got that buy-in, and set the tone at the top, which was critical for this project. It also allowed us to look at if our existing framework of choice, which was ISO, is adapt for the firm to meet these global set of requirements. And it took us a while, but we were pretty convinced that yes, this is the path we want to go down. And it was wholeheartedly adopted by the firm. The next step was moving away from technology and then actually looking at our services, our practices, to make sure those specific privacy operational aspects are met throughout the life cycle of the data, from where we are collecting the data all the way once the final services are given. These practices were then also pushed upon to our supply chain, to our supplier. We ended up having multiple discussions with our critical suppliers who were engaged with us in processing data. In some cases, we helped them to come up to the level of comfort we wanted them. In other cases, they were already there, so that really helped us. What has really came out of the previous step of buying in and setting the tone at the top, I think we understood as a firm that this project needs a two-way approach. While we are fixing and trying to remediate and step up with our existing services and solutions and product, any future service, product, technology which we intend to adopt must already meet or exceed these regulations. So security by design, privacy by design basically became the norm. Our architecture review board now is heavily involved, ingrained in business. The business and service line fully understand the underlying risk of not playing by the rules, because it can heavily impact the go live date of these services and product if they are not built the right way. And we help them to understand these challenges early on in the design phase. So which is now helping that we are a lot more confident. Our clients have a lot more confidence and trust in our services because they are being developed in the right manner. And from day one, we are meeting or exceeding the obligations these regulators are putting on our services and product which being offered. The final two steps was creating a culture around privacy and security and this integrated approach. We all know, we thoroughly believe culture eats strategy for breakfast. So we can do all the good work, but if we don't have the right culture, it really doesn't matter. The buy-in from stakeholders and the support from the executive leadership really helped us. We ran extensive awareness campaigns across the firm. There was some role-based specific training and workshop held by both security and privacy group. We heavily advocate the Privacy and Security Champions program within the firm. And there are strong motivational benefits coming up if a particular individual or group go above and beyond in supporting this initiative. And these tones and initiative had such a strong voice from our executive leadership that we are happy to share that the whole firm embraced the culture, and we are now seeing huge benefits around that. The last but not the least is setting up a governance structure around all this. You define a control, you want to make sure it runs effectively, and that's what we ended up doing. We have an integrated governance model which has KPIs coming in from our privacy office, coming in from our technology and security. These governance model and integrated risk and framework helped us to an extent where we know what are the main challenges in each of the group. We do have some mutual objectives which needs to be met by the group, and we fully have that understanding that I really can't meet my objective unless I have that kind of support coming in from the privacy office or from the compliance office. So people have that common understanding of the problems, and we take a mutual approach in terms of sharing the resources, making sure that if a particular group is planning to bring up a solution on a product, the other group executives are fully involved in that discussion, in that review and evaluation, so that if there are mutual objectives, those are met. And any enterprise-wide solution or product now which has been brought in needs to complement our existing framework across the board. So this really helped us to drive these initiatives in a much more cost-effective manner. And that was our integrated security and privacy framework, which helped us to meet and exceed, having spent so much time and resources in setting up. We were more than confident to go ahead and then get ourselves assessed. And I think it was a moment of pride when the firm is among the first 100 to get certified on both security and privacy certifications out there. So that's our journey on establishing the integrated framework. So Jason, I'm more than happy to take questions. Anybody wants to connect offline, feel free. We'll be happy to talk more.
Well, thank you very much, Rahul, and apologies again for that little, I thought there was a bit of a disconnect on your side. It was actually all to do with my bandwidth. The final session of the week, guys, and I had bandwidth issues from the control center. Oh, well. So we do have plenty of questions that have come in, plenty of questions. So I'm going to attack these from top to bottom here, Rahul. First one, with the increasing cyber attacks, complexities, rules/laws, do you think that the current security and privacy frameworks are covering well those spectrums to account for them?
I will say we can never say that any framework will cover you 100%. I think what frameworks gives you is a structure. My legal and privacy team, I think the map which we talked about, if you go month-on-month basis, there are 3 to 4 different security or privacy regulations which are being added to that. Adopting one of the leading framework does give you a structured way to go and meet them in a much more scalable way without spending too much additional resources and budget to get compliant. So I will say picking and adopting any of the leading framework will definitely ease your process, because the wave of regulations within privacy and security is not ending. With every week new breach being announced, trust me, it will be more difficult in coming days.
Thank you very much. What recommendations or frameworks would you give to orgs on global scale to meet or exceed regulatory obligations so they work to cover both security and privacy?
Again, I did mention some of them, NIST, ISO, these are the underlining ones, but it all depends upon which geography you are working. Many regulators have their own recommendations to the service provider operating within that space. So if you are a global firm, ISO, NIST will be a good starting point. They are adoptable by firm or organization of any size. But again, I did mention that as part of my session is that it depends a lot upon what the overall objective of the firm, the geographies you are operating, and most importantly, the culture and the buy-in from the management. If you have a framework which you have already adopted for security, because security, I think, came, the consciousness for having a security framework came slightly prior to privacy. I believe every framework provider out there or guidance out, guiding regulatory out there have complemented their security framework with a complementary privacy. So rather than reinventing the wheel, I will say just see what comes as an extension of your existing framework and adopt that.
Great, thank you. How did you approach the silo between security and privacy now more so than ever?
I think the way we handle is that my full-time job at the firm, which I see a lot more of the firm getting replicated, is just to play the bridge. I am the bridge between my chief privacy officer and my global CISO. That's why the title Global Privacy comes into. I get intensive, my incentive is purely if I can come out with opportunities where an existing security program can be extended to meet the privacy requirement or a compliance requirement, because that gives us standardized responses. We can cost effectiveness and extension of an existing program is always easier to get the management buy-in rather than putting a business case for a whole new operation or a initiative. So we meet more often. I think I am among the handful of people who have a good bit of insight into my privacy, compliance, and security budget and forecast. They all invite me, I think, and so are executive at CISO, CIO, and chief privacy officer level. They do talk about the top pain points which are coming with any regulations or operations or service line we are introducing. I think those channels of communication needs to be open, as long as there is that conscious understanding and buying that there are many mutual objectives in each of our own vertical, and that share acknowledgement and appreciation that I will not be able to succeed in meeting my objective unless I have that support from the other group. Once you have that, things starts to fall in line.
It would be interesting to know how many of the attendees have, somebody in their organization that essentially does the role that you do, right? And if they do have that role, if the title is as defined as yours is, because that can also sometimes cause that confusion as to how who is the connector here, right? So it'd be interesting to understand that.
I think it depends where you sit. I report into my global CISO, but I have dotted line reporting into general counsel, where my privacy and compliance report into. At least quarterly, I do submit my governance report in terms of how many initiatives are getting integrated, what were the underlying reason, and if something has to be, I think we are at a point where if a particular function has to start a project which does not have any dependencies or mutual objective, that is being questioned a lot more than the one which has an integrated approach. So if you have CIO, CISO, and Chief Privacy Officer coming together all on one call and advocating a project, it's very difficult not to get in the buy-in from the executive committee or capital committee, rather than a CISO or a Chief Privacy Officer going in alone and trying to fight. Because trust me, the kind of question we are getting from our capital and executive committees that, have you talked to the security folks? They might have something already in their tool set which can do this for you. So I think that realization is coming. And once you have that ground rule set, it will be a lot easier. But yeah, it took us a couple of years to reach to that level where we are asking the right kind of question. I think now when we have a requirement, be it coming from a client, existing service line, or a regulation, the first thing we see is that our privacy officers drop a note to me and our CISO is that, hey guys, we need to have this. Is this something which is already doing, or can we tweak our existing tool to produce this? So that's how we are keeping and tapping into each other's budget and keeping everything in control.
That's good. That's fantastic. No, straight in numbers. So it definitely helps. Kyle asks, does your legal team have the skill set to meet the needs of coming up with your privacy framework? Or did you have to seek a special firm to meet this need?
We have multiple firms. We have external counsel support in each of the geographies. I think we have a great internal legal counsel which does a great job. But yes, we do have a lot of external counsel because of the rapidly increasing legal requirements. The good thing is that our legal team, once they understand something new is coming, often also allows us to meet this external counsel and seek clarity on the execution and implementation of some of these regulatory requirements. But to answer Kyle's question, our legal counsel does have a lot of external support.
Okay, thank you very much. How often do you find the tech teams trying to skirt frameworks to get things done faster?
We do that a lot, I must say. Vice versa, if we want to push a particular technology group, or we have to push our technology group to get things done a bit quicker, we also use regulatory framework, regulations, and requirements coming out of them to push certain things. But I think there is a great sense of respect within the group now, because we do have a very clear understanding of what each group is dealing with when you put your objectives and pain points in front of each other. There has been cases where I can tell you security resources have got a lot of adequacy coming in from technology and privacy group that, no, we do believe security team need additional resources out here because you guys are not only doing this, but you are also helping us in achieving these three things. And we had fortune within the firm where we didn't forecasted something, technology or privacy group had certain open rec, and they said, well, we can push this project to next quarter. Feel free to pick this position and then get on with this project. So, yeah.
Great. Did you or do you implement penalties to the teams that push back against said policies?
Not at this point. I think we are a firm believer that motivation works better than penalty. What we do is that we do present a dashboard on our services and product, a kind of score on secure by design and privacy by design in terms of how green, amber, or red you are. And that's our wall of fame. Trust me, we don't penalize if you're leaning towards red. What it do mean is that you will be meeting security, CISO's office, privacy office, compliance office team a lot more than you would like to. And then most often when you are meeting folks from these offices, you tend to get additional work. So nobody wants to be there. On the other hand, if you are on the wall of fame, there are a lot of positive perks coming your way. Those champions get heavily rewarded. In fact, we have created a pool between privacy security group where we actually recognize the champions who are going above and beyond from these product and service line to keep their product on that wall in terms of monetary benefit or recognition just by our group.
Nice. Yeah, embarrassment is punishment enough, right? So there's no need to go any further. How do we collaborate to mitigate the threats or risks to the organization? Could be a training tool to help for employees to tighten the data privacy? Could there be a training tool to help employees tighten data privacy?
Yes, awareness was the key to build a culture. Unless people, I believe, in that triage of people, process, and technology is the most critical thing. You can have all the tools and you can draft all the processes. If your employees are not motivated enough to follow them, they will find loopholes. As I said, we conducted journal awareness session, but we were very focused. There are role-based training and workshop which we did conducted. I think we had real-time data and report published wherein a same product which worked with us from the designing phase, how shortened was time to go live, and the number of hours development team had to put in once they believed they were ready and security or privacy team was brought in to review, versus somebody who have just followed security and privacy by design principle from the very beginning. And when you start presenting their own success stories to them, the level of acceptability to the fact goes up really high. But yeah, I will say you have to reinforce these ideas, these principles, these facts again and again. And we have people join in, come back again. So awareness is the key.
Cool, thank you very much. Any simplified methods you would provide to improving a privacy program?
I will say one thing which must be done from privacy office is that be very clear in their messaging. Often these the language used by regulators and law are so vague. From technology and from purely security implementation group standpoint, it's very difficult to figure out what exactly needs to be done. And I think that's where we do a really good job. Work with your privacy team and make sure they understand what our tools can do and cannot do. And they will tell you whether we are meeting or we are falling short of compliance. But that clear, concise messaging from both the team goes a long way on upgrading your compliance.
Thank you. Sensing a theme here: collaboration, communication, the key in making sure. Yep, good stuff. Couple questions left, and I'm going to keep going whilst we've got you here, Rahul. So, how do you encourage cross-organizational workforce collaboration between executives, security, privacy, legal teams? We obviously spoke quite a bit about that already. But just to reiterate, that kind of is the key to your success and what you're doing there.
Yes, I think the important thing is that our governance council is called it's risk infosec and compliance. All the 3 leader compliance officers where privacy is housed. We talk a lot about each other's KPIs. When we sat with our privacy office, we wanted to check with them what will they like to know from our tools, which will give them that assurance that we are meeting or exceeding what has been prescribed by these regulations. Trust me, there are different requirements coming out of MAS, Monetary Authority of Singapore, versus what GDPR, DPOs wants before they attest to regulators. We worked with them to draft those reporting capabilities where we could not. We went ahead and honestly shared we don't believe the tool is the right tool for that. We started exploring if we need a new tool, or can a combination of two tools meet those requirements. And in some cases, yes, in other cases, we went ahead and upgraded our tool set, where it's not only meeting security but also privacy requirement. And that whole visibility in terms of what we can do and what we can't went a long way in enhancing that collaboration.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Well, that really brings us to the end. There's another question here. I mean, you kind of tackled it as well. Often there's no clear line between privacy and compliance. How have you overcome this to distinguish between privacy risk and compliance? You kind of addressed as well. But yeah, I mean, that brings us to the end of the questioning from the audience here. So, and the session itself, and obviously the forum. I want to really take this opportunity to thank you very much, Rahul, for your insights, and I hope the audience can join me in a virtual round of applause for Rahul. Extremely insightful. It's really great.